Welcome to the Accidental Experts podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Hamilton. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a child and family therapist. I have been in practice for over 15 years, and I'm also a mom of 4. So I know the challenges both professionally and personally. I'm so glad that you're here today to grow your parenting toolbox. Please come as you are and be ready to learn. My goal is to make you the accidental expert so that you can raise healthy humans. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm so excited about our topic today, toddler development. Okay, so most of you know that I have a toddler at home too. And so anytime that I can talk about toddler development, I love it because it reminds me of what is expected behavior. And I think as parents, sometimes we don't know what is expected behavior. And when we hear our kids' behavior as something that experts are saying, hey, this is expected, it kind of gives us a different perspective on it. So we have Gabriele Nicolet, and she is going to talk to us about all things toddler and help us understand how to navigate the tantrum or meltdown, and also just like what is expected behavior. With that, let's get to Gabriele.
I'm delighted to be here.
Yes, and we're going to be talking about toddler development, which is near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, mine too.
Yes. I mean, I do it all day, but I also do it at home all day because I have a 3-year-old who actually just decided that he's 4, but he's not. And people ask him, how old are you? And he says, he puts up his fingers and he is 4. And I'm
that is a very 3-year-old thing to do, actually.
Right? I was like, we're really in the 3s. We're really here, right?
Yeah.
Can I trick you? Do you think I'm 4? Right?
And by the way, I just figured out about time, like that there's a past, present, and future. And I have no idea what that means, but I know it exists.
Yes, there's a world outside myself, right? Okay, so this is such an important thing. And I mean, here's the truth. When we have kids, no one tells us what it's really going to be like, and you don't know what you're getting. I mean, you just get what you get and you don't throw a fit. That's what we talk about at our house, right? But our kids challenge us because sometimes they're a mirror back to us, and that does not mean that we know how to handle it.
Yeah.
And especially
really
when
true.
These kids are so little and they're learning, right? So much about the world. And so they're not regulating and we're expected to be regulated, and it's hard.
It's really, really hard. And I think, I mean, you're touching on, as I knew you would, kind of like all the little big issues and questions, which is kids are little mirrors and that we have to look at every day and be reminded of the things that we are still working on, that we have unresolved about our pasts, because we all had a childhood.
Yes.
We all had parents, who did a better or worse job of being our parents. And all that comes up to play when you have a baby and you have no idea at first that that's what's happening. It's real sneaky at times.
It can be so sneaky. And you're like, why does that upset me so much? And then it's like, oh, okay, this is about me, right? It's not really what they're doing, but it is what they're doing, right? Like it just is so hard. Okay, so talk to us about, this is such a broad question, but I think typical toddler development, right? And we would say toddler is like 1 to 4-ish, right?
sure.
Before we go to school, after we're no longer a baby, we immediately go into this toddler stage.
Yeah.
And so can you talk to us about the important developmental milestones? Because there's so many that are happening in this stage, and what we should know about these developmental stages.
Yeah, there are so many things happening. And basically, the thing to know is by age 5, your child's brain is like 80% developed. And there are some very important areas of the brain that are going to still be cooking until they're about 26. But a lot is happening. It's like the most intense period of brain development that we have as humans, other than adolescence, which is like a whole other category. And you've got some time before you get there. So this is good news. Yeah. But there's so much happening. And so I think the thing that I want to lead with is this idea that when it's going well, child development looks effortless. It looks like nothing. it's not that it looks like nothing's happening, but it looks like everything proceeds from everything else. And so I'll give you a motor example, because that's certainly where we see a lot of really obvious development, right? So an infant who can't hold their head up, right? Within 3-4 months, we want them to be holding their heads up. By about age 6 months, we want them to be sitting up, 7 maybe, right? All of these have bleeds.
Sure.
In terms of the age at which we expect. And then, between 6 and 9 months, they should be starting to pull to stand. They should be crawling. They should be scooting. They should be grabbing things. They should be reaching things with their hands, putting their toes in their mouth, putting their hands in their mouth, putting everything in their mouths. And it all looks like it proceeds as if it's supposed to. And that is kind of what we expect. That's why we call them milestones. At about 12 months of age, we expect that kids will take their first steps. And here's the thing that we don't really talk about much. It's because they sat up at 6 months, and because they crawled at 8 months, and because they pulled to stand, and because they reach for things and put them in their mouths, that's how they get to the walking. The walking can't happen on its own. So all of these things, and I'll go through a couple more, they're all cumulative, right? This is like, yes, this will be on the test. And so motor is certainly something like by age 1, we expect kids to be walking 12, 13, maybe 14 months. If a kid's not walking at 14 months, we have to wonder why. Okay. If the kid's not walking at 16 months, we really wonder why. But most kids are. They're just doing it like it's their job, which it is. And it's not they don't fall down. Of course they fall down, but they're just doing it over and over again, right? And they're practicing. Okay. So that's kind of motor. And then certainly by like age 2, we expect them to be able to run, to navigate maybe stairs, holding onto a railing or somebody's hand, and not like sitting down every time they got to go down an uneven surface. By age 3, certainly they're jumping with 2 feet, maybe skipping. And some of this has to do with like how coordinated is your kid.
Sure.
But it is worth checking out, and I'm obviously not going to go through all of them here, but it is worth checking out milestones in terms of like, okay, what's on track. And I'll just plug this series right off the top. It's a very old series. I don't know if you've heard of them, called Your 1-Year-Old, Your 2-Year-Old.
Oh, yes.
They're amazing. Now, they do assume that mom stays home with the kids and dad goes to work. So you just got to know that going in. But the child development information in there is really good.
Yeah.
They don't know a lot about screens because they're, old books. But anyway, the point being, by age 4, a child should be motorically, like gross motor, moving your body through the world, able to navigate really, really well. They shouldn't be crashing into people. They shouldn't be falling down a lot. I see a lot of kids who do have some motor involvement in my practice. And often parents come in saying, yeah, my kid's really clumsy. If your kid's clumsy, we want to know why, right? Clumsy is not typical development. Clumsy means something else is happening, and let's look. And again, it's not like, oh, we're freaking out all the time. No, we're not. But we've reached a point in what we know about child development, and I'm sure you counsel parents in the same way. Like, we know a lot more about child development than we did 10 years ago, 30 years ago. And certainly, child development wasn't even a field until like the late 1960s. That's crazy to me. That we didn't think that, children are worthy of study. Like, that's super interesting, right? So, motor. The domains that I like to think of in like big buckets are like motor, being gross and fine motor. So like, can you pick up your food and put it in your mouth? That's a pretty important thing. Can you, reach or wave or, do these kinds of things with your hands? So that's kind of the fine motor side of things. Social, emotional / play. Like, what are you doing with people and objects? Are Are you following somebody's eye gaze? Do you have joint attention? That is a skill that should be in, and I'm going to get my ages all wrong because I kind of have this broad sweep. But like age 15, 16 months for sure, probably sooner, right? How many 9-month-olds are in the stroller, right? You see a dog walking down the street and the kid looks at you. That's what we want, right? If kid is just looking at dog, that's not social, right? Social means the three of us are involved. The thing we're looking at and us too. So that's why books are so important. Book reading is hugely important for kids. And not because we care about the words that you're reading. Not at all. I should teach a whole class on book reading. There are clinicians who do that. So social play. Language. Hello, says the speech therapist. Like, what is it again? And then thinking. And those two things are different. And we can put play in the thinking category, in the cognition category. We can put it in the language category. We can put it in the social category. Play is really important. The work of children is to play. They should be playing all the time. They should be playing with real objects in the real world. And they should be dirty at the end of the day. All toddlers should be filthy, dirty at the end of the day.
Yes. So many people are cringing now. They're like, are you kidding me? No. Yeah.
I know. And it's really, really important. Like, this is not optional. I want to, okay, I'm going to do this sensory piece because I think of sensory as part of motor, but it's also part of play. It's also part of social. Babies, new humans, have no experience with the world. They don't know how anything works. They don't know how gravity works. They don't know that poop is gross. They don't know anything. So they're learning. The way they learn first is by mouthing, then is by watching other people around them, and mostly by doing. So if I'm experimenting with gravity and, a 9-month-old I know we're like early before toddlerhood, but all this is so important. The toddler who's dropping peas or whatever over the side of their tray is engaged in a scientific experiment.
I love it when they look over to see it falling on the ground. They're like, did that just make it? Oh, it did. Yeah.
And what kind of sound is it going to make now? And is the dog going to eat this one? And is my mommy going to yell at me this time? Is my brother going to pick it up and eat it? Like, there's so many things that could happen.
Yes. So many. Yes.
And we have to go through those experiments ourselves. They have to go through those experiments. What happens when I put yogurt all over my face, all over my torso, and in my hair? How does that feel? So it's both, right? It's like, how is my grown-up going to respond? Number one. But how does it feel? Is this dangerous or not dangerous? And when we signal to kids that they need to be neat all the time, what we're really signaling to them is that the world is a dangerous place and they should stay away from it, which is the opposite of what we're trying to do.
Yeah,
I know that that's true. And so letting them get messy is signaling to them that the world is an okay place, that they are allowed to experience, and that they can be safe in it no matter what happens. Like, fundamentally, that's what we're giving kids when we let them get dirty.
Yeah.
And it's a big idea for such a little, like, oh God, now I got to give this kid a bath.
Yes.
So language. Okay. I'm always on a tangent here, and you just cut me off if you want me to stop talking.
No, you're good.
Okay. So language development, same thing, right? Cumulative. So, obviously if we're getting ready to use mouth words, talking, we're going to want really robust nursing or bottle feeding. So we need that tongue to be against the palate to really have a strong suckle for an infant. Then we want baby at about 6 months of age to start doing babbling, ba, 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 ma, 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 la, 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 right? At about 9 months of age, we look for more jargony kind of talking. And then at age 1, we want at least one true word. So it could be baba, but baba always means bottle.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean everything in my environment. I've got other things for that, right? And I think for me as a speech therapist, obviously the language piece is really crucial. And I think there's two elements here that I really want to focus on, because one is quantity and the other is quality. So as from 1 to 4, what we want is a huge increase in the quantity of words and the number of different words that are being used,
Mm-hmm.
and the number of different ways that those words are being combined. And we want the quality of the speech. So what kids are saying, the way that they're saying it. So the clarity of their words, we want that to increase. By the time we're 3, a 3-year-old, and part of the reason 3-year-olds are so much trouble is because they talk like they know what they're talking about, but they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got like a little bit of a disconnect between like that social emotional piece and what they can actually handle and what they're able to say.
Mm-hmm.
They're able to explain to you, but mommy, I really needed that lollipop because it's just mine and I knew I had to have it. I mean, they can say all of those words,
Mm-hmm.
and they really want the lollipop.
Yes.
And the fact of the matter is sometimes they don't get the lollipop.
Mm-hmm.
And that's our jobs as parents, right? Is to like decide where those boundaries are and hold those.
Mm-hmm.
But they can explain to you a pretty first, next, last kind of story. It can be pretty embellished. And certainly by age 4, we should really be understanding most of what a kid is saying. And they should be using lots of different vocabulary words, lots of different constructions. They should be able to follow multi-step directions. And so again, everything builds on everything else. And it's all cumulative. But that quality and quantity piece is really, really important, because I've had, and again, because of the work I do, I've had families where, I'll say, so what words does this child have? And it's maybe an 18-month-old who says 5 words, but the last time they said those 5 words was a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not a thing. We want those kids using words often, early and often, to get their needs met and express their ideas.
Yeah.
Which is something that can make this toddler development part so frustrating when they don't have language, right? Because if we don't have language, then we are tending to use behaviors to get what we want.
Yes. And actually, thank you for bringing that up, because we did actually skip the cognitive piece of this. Cognition and language, we think of together because we use words to express our thoughts, but they are not the same thing.
Yeah.
And so we really want to be cognizant of that, particularly at around age 3, right? Where they've got a lot of words and they know how to combine them. And again, cognitively, they're still like super confused about time. They just realize that they're not the only person in the world, that the world doesn't revolve around them, that mommy and daddy do something else when I go to bed. Like, what? Which is why, by the way, 3-year-olds never want to go to bed.
Yeah, it's FOMO.
It's FOMO.
Yes.
On steroids.
Exactly. And you cannot rationalize with them because the cognitive piece is not there, but they can explain to you, I don't want to go to bed, right? I'm not tired. And you're like, oh my gosh, you are so tired. You are so tired. You are we're hitting our wall here. Please. I'm not tired.
And it's so 3-year-olds, I think, are the worst, because when they're 2, most 2-year-olds are some 2-year-olds are fully verbal and really talking in complex sentences. I mean, I wrote down a sentence that my daughter said at that age. She was 2 years, 4 months. She said, "Mommy, I put my shoes on all by myself." Okay, fine. That's one example. And then we have some 2-year-olds who are still just learning to combine 2 words. And again, that range is okay, but what's the quality and the frequency?
Mm-hmm.
But 3-year-olds, so 2-year-olds are still kind of cute, right? Cutesy. But 3-year-olds have made this leap again, where they're aware of all these things. So they've had one cognitive leap, but not the ones that they need. And negotiating with a 3-year-old is a terrible, terrible idea
Yeah.
because they're entrenched in their opinion and incapable of seeing it any other way, like neurologically incapable. And if you dig in the same, then that never ends well because they have more staying power than we do.
Yeah, no doubt. Right. Yes. Yeah. I can tell my other kids, the 3 older ones, like, hey, we're not doing that, whatever. And they will, I mean, not always accept it, but for the most part they do. Right.
Yeah.
I tell the 3-year-old like, hey, we're not doing that right now. And then like 5 minutes later, he's like, we're going to go outside. And I was like, no, it's raining. We're not going to go outside right now. We're going to go outside. I'm going to put my shoes on. And I'm like, dude, no. Right. And I'm like, fine. I'm like, what? But then I'm like, oh, no, I can't say fine. Because then he's going to learn to like trick me into other things. And so I'm like, nope, we're not doing it. We'll go outside in 15 minutes. It'll be raining. You'll be the only one, but I'll stand inside and watch you play outside. And then, I've set the boundary because I'm like, I don't really care if he's outside in the rain as long as it's not lightning. But, if I said no, it's hard to keep to it. They're so persistent.
They're so, so persistent. And they know, so this is the other thing that we forget sometimes, which is they are little sponges and they have already at age 3 internalized how my parent deals with me when I'm being intransigent, right? In air quotes. So when you, mommy, are being intransigent, I will deal with you in the same way.
Yes.
So this is where things can get really wonky because now we're talking about 3-year-olds who are using back talk. And again, I'm putting all these in air quotes because they learned it from somewhere and usually it was us. Oops.
Yes.
And it's totally fine.
It. Yes.
Yeah. And so like they're using strategies. Like these are smart cookies, most of them.
Yes.
All of them really. They've all got their smarts in the ways that they do.
Yes.
And they are soaking it up.
Yes.
So, if I learn that mommy sometimes, gives me a break, if I am real reasonable and if I'm able to do that and I say, well, in 15 minutes, we'll go, So like, oh my God, they're so funny.
Yes. Yeah. They totally know our like number, right? Like they know how to do the things. And it's when you sit back, you're not in it, like, and you're not getting frustrated about it. You're like, wow, this is so impressive.
It is super impressive.
Such a small person able to, take a strategy that we have put into our environment or a school has put into the environment or other people have modeled in that environment and then use that to help them get what their objective is.
Totally. And it's so what I love about what you just said is it involves the adult kind of putting themselves down a notch and not staying in the power position. And because it just turns out that most of parenting, like the current whatever parenting paradigms that exist, many of them are based on compliance and control. And that's actually, number one, really hard for some kids. And it doesn't really work that well long term. You might have a toddler that is compliant. But chances are if you're listening to parenting podcasts, reading parenting books, or looking at stuff online, like chances are your toddler is not compliant. And nobody's compliant all the time. Okay. And nobody's not compliant all the time.
Yeah.
There's a happy medium here. But what's really interesting is like we get our undies in a twist, like big time, when kids are sassing us. Meanwhile, we have sassed them. And like to ask somebody who's small to understand a power differential is a tough task. And it's maybe not that useful, honestly.
Yeah. Yep. No, I'm with you. Okay. So this kind of brings us to our next thing that I was hoping for us to talk about is toddlers love no, right? They love this word of no. And, parents will say to me, like, they're throwing tantrums, right? I tell them no. And then they throw a tantrum. And then we feel frustrated. And I think parents will say to me, like, what is normal? What's healthy? What's expected? And then when do we know that it's not?
Yeah. So about age 2, kids learn. So cognitively, kids are starting to realize that they are a separate entity from you. So, which is so amazing, right? Until about 24 months, they have no idea. They think that you're you and they're them, and
Yeah.
like everything's the same.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So, so this, what is it called? Dissociation is not the right word. It's called something. Anyway, this sort of first separation comes with the word no. And so, I'm going to sort of make your question into 2 parts, because toddlers actually love to say no. Because they have just realized, like, oh my God, I'm myself. I'm not actually attached to her. Oh my gosh, I can run in the complete opposite direction. This is super fun. Oh my God, it's amazing. Okay. So, and in case you can't tell, like, I love to get into the brains of toddlers and then explain them to parents, because they're like, oh, I never thought of it that way. Okay, now I have more patience immediately, right?
Yes.
So toddlers developmentally, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds need to be saying no to things. That's their job. They got to figure out, okay, where do I end? Where does the world begin? What are the rules? What are the boundaries? What is that someone else going to do when I say this? It's part of that whole experimentation thing. We as adults also have to say no to kids in order to keep them safe and healthy. So we cannot say yes to every lollipop. We cannot allow, this is my personal opinion, I hope it will be shared, we cannot allow 2-year-olds to walk in a parking lot without holding a hand or a stroller of some kind. They're not trustworthy. Okay. And so, right, there are some basic safety rules that we have to enforce. And their job is to push the boundary. And our job is to lovingly and calmly, whenever possible, hold that boundary that we have determined is necessary for their health and safety. It's a kind of a pain in the neck, honestly. It's not that fun. They don't like it. We don't like it. But the more you can kind of make peace with, like, oh yeah, they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do, and I also can do what I'm supposed to do. Like, both can be true at the same time. Like, they can be really upset about having to go to bed, and I can still put them to bed.
Yes.
Like, if you can get there, you're golden. It's really hard sometimes, though.
Yeah. And they may still protest, right?
Of course.
You can still be upset just because we've decided they are still going to bed, even though they don't like it. Does not mean they're like, okay, you win. They're like, no.
No, they're going to keep being upset.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because so often, like, I'll propose a strategy to parents. I'm sure you do this too, right? Okay, so you're going to stay on message. That's one of my favorite bedtime strategies. It's time for bed. I know it's time for bed, but I don't want to go to bed. I know. And it's time for bed, right? And parents will come back and say, it didn't work. And the reason they think it didn't work was because their child was still upset.
Yes.
No, your child gets to be upset about the things they're upset about, and you get to stay calm and hold the boundary. It works if you stay calm and you use the strategy. That's how you know the strategy works. And over time, and usually I tell parents of, like, typically developing kids, like 3 to 4 nights of, if we've got any kind of neurodivergence or any kind of diagnosis happening, I'll say like 5 to 10 nights, depending on the kid, how reactive they are. You're going to get a kid who goes to bed much more easily because you are staying calm and holding that boundary. And they're like, oh, I guess there isn't any wiggle room here. Okay, I'll go to bed. Most of the time, that's what happens.
Well, and it's hard because sometimes they offer really reasonable ideas, right? Like last night, I was putting my toddler to bed, and he was like, we snuggle before he goes to bed, and we sing songs and read a book. And so it was late. And so I said, unfortunately, because it's late, we had people over. And so we have to go to bed without a story tonight, but I will read you one in the morning. I know. But it was just like, it was too late, holiday, just like all the stuff. And so I said, I sing these songs. I don't want the songs. And I was like, okay, but it's time for bed then. And he is like, okay. And he was like, we snuggle here. And I was like, no, we're not going to snuggle anymore. Like, this is it. It's time for bed. And he was like, yeah, but you didn't read me a book. And I was like, I know, time for bed. And he was like, you didn't sing me songs. I'm like, you said you didn't want songs, right? Like, I'm like, who am I negotiating with? You are a terrorist. Like, it just is so frustrating because like nothing makes you happy. But I was like, buddy, you chose no songs. It's time for bed. Okay, well, I'll sleep on the big bed. And I'm like, no, because in his room, he has a big bed for guests and then his crib.
Yeah.
And like, I'll sleep on the big bed. I'm like, no, it is time for bed in your bed, right? It's so hard because it was like, I mean, what difference does it really make if he sleeps on the big bed? Like, and I move him, right? What difference does it make? But it's that part of like, we've decided that this is the routine.
Yeah.
You go in your crib, right? And so then it's like, because I know that if I let him wiggle, then he'll wiggle on more and more and more things. Like there's space. And so like, sometimes I think we're as parents, our own worst enemy in this.
Oh, for sure. Because again, to your point, it sounds so reasonable. I will say that your little guy sounds like he's not a super big reactor, because there are families in which if we change the bedtime routine kind of on the spot,
yes,
that's completely destabilizing.
Mm-hmm.
And, there are many families that I've counseled where I'm like, even if it's late, you do the quick book, you do the routine and you do it just quicker. And again, when you do that, then you can sometimes avoid some of this back and forth about, it's got to be this way and it's got to be that way. But You're right about, because inevitably what would have happened, if he, let's just take the big bed, right? I sleep on the big bed. It's an attempt, right, for him to take something from himself, to take something away from you that you have taken away from him, right? It's like an equalizing kind of situation. It's like, well, you're going to remove this, so I'm going to do something different. But what ends up happening, and I know you know this, is you would have created more uncertainty and more anxiety, if that's a thing for toddlers, which it isn't, but like more uncertainty for him.
Sure. Yeah.
And you knew that you had to kind of gently and calmly remind him that, nope, buddy, it's time for bed. I know tonight was different. We had guests. This was different. And you're still going to bed. This part is the same.
Yes. No, but you're right. I mean, I think in that moment, I was like, the book, because sometimes he likes these books that are like scientific novels. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm reading like a 20-minute book here. It is one book. Like, anyways, but I think I will try the part of keeping the routine exactly the same with a shorter book. Right. Mm-hmm. So, and I think the other thing that I notice is we have a whole library of books in each of our kids' rooms. And sometimes it's overwhelming for them to pick too many things from, right, to be like, okay, pick your book, right? And then they're over there and you're like, come on, what are you doing? And so I started being like, this book or this book. I don't want those books. Well, if you're not choosing, then I'm choosing this one, right? Like I'm still going to do the thing, but I think I should have just picked a shorter book or two shorter books. But I think that's a good idea because I do like keeping the routine the same, right? Like whether we're here or on vacation or at grandma's house, like everything staying the same helps at least us to be able to go to bed, right? With a consistent thing, even with my older kids, like they like the same thing every night. And if, on certain nights we go out for date night. And so the kids know that's a different routine, but it's consistently different. It is like, that is the same every week. Yeah. So it helps to have predictability. And I think kids crave routine, consistency. We like it. I mean, as an adult, I like things to be the same. I hate change. I mean, I know I have to embrace it, but I just really like, if somebody's like, hey, we're going to change this up. I'm like, no, I'm really the first person to say no. Then I think about it and then I'm like, okay, actually you're right.
Yeah.
But I think they like the consistency too, right? So when we throw those unpredictable things into the mix, it is very disruptive.
It really is. And, it goes to what we know about brain development, right? Which is brains at their base level, like survivalist brain, like to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and make things easy, right? So when we know, this is in the easy category here, and babies avoid pain and seek pleasure too, kind of hits all three of these. When we have a really solid bedtime routine in place, it signals safety. And really what we're doing, the reason we have bedtime routines and the reason we have comfort at bedtime is not because it's nice, although it certainly is. It's that we're signaling to the nervous system of our child, it is safe for you to lay down your head and get rest. This is a really important life skill.
Yeah.
If we don't learn how to stop what we're doing and put ourselves to bed, then you've got people who are chronically fatigued, underslept, who are not functioning, who have accidents, who have depression, who are overweight, who have a whole host of problems because they don't get adequate sleep. One of the major lessons in early childhood is sleep. Like, how do I get enough sleep?
Yeah.
And kids don't always get enough sleep. I think we forget that that sleep is really sleep is hygiene. It's neurological hygiene. And so having that same bedtime, even on the weekends, there's so much research on this. Even a 15-minute difference has effects, and then cumulatively, obviously, all that's going on. But just like kids getting enough sleep is really important, and knowing how to wind down is also hugely important.
Yeah. And I think, in terms of sleep hygiene, like some of the things I talk to parents about too is like the signaling to the brain, right? That we're releasing the melatonin, which is what helps us to fall asleep, right? And so like putting on pajamas or taking a shower, like there are things that we're doing within, like, it seems like we're just doing things arbitrarily, right? Like, okay, our parents did this, so we're going to do this, or whatever it is, or society says we're supposed to do this. But there is a lot of importance to the way that we do stuff. And it's, I think, getting your kid ready for bed before it's time to like literally go to sleep, putting on their pajamas or taking the bath, right? And those kind of things are really important, which is starting to create that melatonin, which is going to help them to be able to fall asleep, right? So I think there are things that chemically need to happen in our brain that, like, especially my kids, when the sun is up later, like they'll start saying like, the sun is up, it's not time for bed. Like, what are you talking about, lady? You are literally out of your mind. Like, it is still, like, I can hear other kids playing outside. Like, it is not bedtime.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I know, the worst mom ever, right? I think if you hear worst mom ever, it's like you're a sign you're doing the right thing.
Totally. And I was that mom too. My kids were in bed so early. And also, like, bonus, you might get a minute to sit down by yourself or with your partner and like have a child-free moment. Like, that's a pretty big deal, actually.
Yes, it's a huge deal. So they're getting well slept, right? Like they get their sleep needs, and then you get time to spend doing something that you enjoy or being with your partner, right? And hopefully you enjoy that too.
Yeah.
And then also getting to sleep on time for you, right? Like I think for parents, we are chronically sleep deprived. And so I think that is hard too. But I think, sometimes parents will ask me like, this has nothing to do with toddlers, but they'll be like, I mean, do I still need to tuck in my 13-year-old, right? And I'm like, yes, you do, right? And they're like, but they can do it themselves. And I'm like, it's not about that. I think, again, this piece, and this isn't something I've said because I haven't thought about it the way that you presented it, but it's about presenting safety, right? Of like, I come in, and when you're 25, if you're here for, the weekend, I'm like, hey, good night, I love you, even if they're not actually going to bed. But it's that part that you're affirming, like, it's safe here to be here because our kids rely on us to tell them they're regulating to our amygdala too. And So our system is telling them it's safe to fall asleep. And because you have to think, I mean, we have evolved as a society, but our brains have not evolved that much. So like when we think about cave times, right? Like we needed our parents to tell us if it was safe or not safe, right? Like our amygdalas our limbic system would turn on, right? But we needed that. And so it makes sense to be like, keeping the routine as telling them it's safety. And I like that. And so 13-year-olds still need safety. I mean, just because they're 13 does not mean that they don't. And they may not, I mean, it might look different for each kid, but like, I still like to lay down with my 13-year-old and just say like, hey, how's your day? Right? Anything on your mind? Anything we need to be thinking about for this week? Anything I can help you with? Right? And I try to,
as long as they'll let you do it, because that time is, listen, as somebody with older kids, it goes, when it's happening, it's endless. But when it's over, it has been fleeting.
Yeah.
It's like the paradox of human existence, I think. But
no, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you talk to me about tantrums? I mean, I know like this word is, it's hard for me to say it.
Yeah, it's kind of a weapon, right? It's a weapon that we use against children. Like, oh, that's just a tantrum.
Yes.
So I'll use a different word and then talk about what it actually is. So, toddlers are too young, most of them, to truly be manipulating us. Okay. There are 3 things that need to be true if you're manipulating somebody. I don't remember what they are, but toddlers don't have the brain capacity for 2 out of 3 of them. So the first tendency that we have is like, oh, they're crying in order to manipulate us.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not true. It's just incorrect. The reason that toddlers are crying is because they are upset that they are not getting the thing that they want, either the connection that they want or the item that they want or whatever, the not going to bed, right? So they are upset, okay? But that upset, and I'm gonna switch it from tantrum to meltdown. That upset is real. Mm-hmm. So the experience of not realizing one's dream in that moment for a toddler. Remember, not cooked. Brain is not at all cooked here, right? Mm-hmm. Toddlers have so much to learn about delayed gratification. They have so much to learn about time. They have so much to learn about their own capability and what it is that they need. Like they know some stuff, but they are learning so much more stuff. Mm-hmm. And so it becomes too much. Sometimes we call these deeply feeling kids. I happen to think that all kids are deeply feeling. Sometimes they're called highly sensitive kids. And sometimes they're just regular kids who are having a hard time. So how frequently your child melts down maybe is on a spectrum of sensitivity. At some point, every toddler is going to melt down, and it's normal. Toddler meltdowns are normal. So let's just say it that way. They should also be fairly infrequent and fairly brief. Mm-hmm. So if somebody's having a meltdown at bedtime, that's a real thing for them. It is very hard for them in that moment to understand why they have to go to bed. They don't understand. They will not in that moment understand. And your best bet, if things have spiraled into a meltdown, is to very kindly and gently say, I know this was hard for you. I love you. Good night. Mm-hmm. And let them, this is not every night for months and months, but a couple of times, let them fall asleep crying. The really fascinating thing about toddlers is they will wake up sunny as sunny can be the next day. Mm-hmm. And we don't have to talk about that meltdown last night. Like we don't have to teach them to hold a grudge. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They don't hold a grudge. They wake up, they're like, I'm fine now. We're mm-hmm. like, great, you're fine. Mm-hmm. So that's okay. So tantrums are not manipulation. Tantrums are a real neurological phenomenon. That neurological phenomenon is called a meltdown. Mm-hmm. It results from just not being able to process because they don't have the brain development to process what's happening. When we have kids, and I see a lot of these guys who are having frequent and intense and long-lasting meltdowns. That's a signal that we got to look closer. We want to look more closely at their routines.
Mm-hmm.
We want to look more closely at sort of parenting strategies and styles, because maybe there's a goodness of fit thing going on. Like maybe we want to change some stuff. Certainly, probably there's a sleep issue.
Yes.
Is there a language processing issue? Is there a motor issue? Is there a sensory issue? There's any number of things that we can look at developmentally. But when meltdowns are frequent and intense and long lasting, we do want to ask the question. It's not just like, oh, they're bratty, or oh, they're too sensitive, or like think of any excuse or write off that you want to put in this, oh, they're just fill in the blank. I can practically guarantee you it's not that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a little bit of curiosity in those moments, rather than judgment of, oh, my kid's just behaving badly.
Yeah.
It goes a long, long way, because behavior is just an outward manifestation of how our nervous systems are doing. Like, how am I? You can tell by the way I'm acting,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm having a meltdown, I'm not well. I'm not good. Things are not okay.
Yeah.
Right. And that doesn't mean we have to fix it right away.
Mm-hmm.
But it does give us a signal like, oh, wow, this is hard for you. In the same way that if I came home and was like, blah, 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 blah from work, right? Somebody would know.
Mm-hmm.
And they would say, wow, you really had a hard day.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully they would say that. So
Yes.
stop yammering, right?
Yes. Yeah. So what do you think, when we have these meltdowns, what is the goal? Or like what, I don't think that there is a goal directed behavior there necessarily. They're saying I'm dysregulated.
Yeah.
They're saying I can't regulate. So what do we do with that meltdown?
So here's what I tell parents who come to coach with me or do my classes. I say, your number one strategy when your child is having a meltdown is to stay calm.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't stay calm, your next best strategy is to figure out why.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where working with a coach, working with a therapist, working with a parenting person, even talking to a friend can help you kind of dig into, okay, what is it about this meltdown that's so upsetting to you?
Mm-hmm.
And usually it's some form of, I don't feel like a good parent, maybe ever, but I really don't feel like a good parent when my child is upset.
Yeah.
And so much compassion and so much grace, because we have all felt like that. And in the parenting game, kids are going to be upset.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually normal also. It's okay for them to be upset and not be happy all the time.
True.
You know, if we were trying to get kids to be happy all the time, they would be very brittle, unresilient little people, because they would never know what it's like to be sad, and they would never be able to recover from sadness.
Mm-hmm. Truly.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's like a lot of just like, okay, I can't stay calm right now. Why? And it might be something as simple as, it's very dysregulating for me as a parent to my auditory system, because I have sound sensitivities. This is true for me. Like when my kid screams at the top of their lungs, I want to run away.
Mm-hmm.
So I got some headphones. And when my child used to scream at the top of her lungs, I would put on my headphones so that I could deal with her. Mm-hmm. And then I could stay calm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's these strategies, right? Tapping out, tagging in and out of a situation. If you've got a parenting partner around, or even a neighbor, right? You call them, you say, hey, I'm losing it over here. You don't have to like go 10 rounds with your toddler all the time. It's just not required.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, sometimes I even will say like, I need a break. I'm going to put myself in a break. Right. Like, and sometimes it's hard because my toddler is the one who still follows me around the house. I don't know. Like I need to go to the bathroom and they're like, there. I'm like, what is going on? I just like need some space. Yeah. But I think it's that part of like Dr. Becky Bailey says, be the potted plant. right? Like you have to stay calm. Stay in this moment, which is hard, right? But I love those little cartoons where they have like the kid who's like the flame or whatever, and then they are resisting the parent, but then they come to the parent and then they're like calming down, right? It's like our system has to be calm in order to help somebody else be calm. So if we're yelling, right, there is no calmness that is coming truly from that. Now they might be quiet eventually, but calm is not, I mean, inside it's not, right? Like on the outside, you might see that it looks calmer, right? But that's normally out of fear, not out of being regulated.
Yeah.
And I think, a goal that I have for each of my kids is to be able to be regulated, because there are going to be people out there who don't really care about them, don't care about their feelings, don't care about a lot about them, and they have to be able to regulate. And that is hard. And so we're teaching that skill. We're modeling it thousands upon thousands of times. So the good news is you have lots of opportunity. Sorry. But you do, right? And so if we don't get it right every time, that's okay, right? You can say like, I didn't handle that well, even when they're little, even if they can't totally understand. You can say, I'm sorry, mommy yelled. I didn't mean to, right? Like mommy is feeling overwhelmed, right? Like I'm sorry. Can I give you a hug? Right. Like, and then mommy's going to try to do better. Right. And so it's like putting the scaffolding in place for ourselves, right, to be successful and to stay in that calm place, right, which is sleeping ourselves, doing things we enjoy, right? Like, I think those things that we're trying to teach to our toddler are also things that would help us to regulate too.
We forget that they are watching us for cues, right? We think we can like live our lives stressed out, rushed, being snappish with people, and somehow teach our children that they should be the opposite of that.
Yes.
And that is not how it works. And you said it before, we've got to model resilience, calm, repair, where it's like, yeah, I flew off the handle. I'm so sorry. Like that didn't feel good to you. We get to show them, not tell them what it's like what kind of human to be in the world.
Sure.
And it would be really great to do that more consciously rather than less consciously. Because of the way we're wired, and some of us, because of the way we were brought up, maybe didn't have such conscious parents. And it's a really nice thing to come to, listen to this kind of podcast, other kind of parenting podcasts, and read stuff about child development, because it gives you the framework. You're like, oh, wow, this really matters. Okay, now I'm motivated. Right? To really look at this. Okay, why can't I stay calm here? Well, I feel like a terrible parent because I work 12-hour days. Okay, interesting. What do I want to do about that? Do I want to quit my job? Do I want to hire somebody? Like there's 100 different, more than that, solutions.
Sure.
Once you've figured out, oh, this is the problem. One of which, by the way, is to say to yourself, I'm a great mom who works 12-hour days. Full stop. Right. And so like, I think we get caught up in like perfect parents are kind to their children all the time. Perfect parents stay home with their children all the time. Perfect parents say this, do that. It's just not true. We say in our classes, my colleague Jen and I, we always say, like, if you're batting 300, like 300 batting average is incredible. That means you hit it out of the park 30% of the time. And the rest of the time you're repairing.
Yeah, truly, which I mean is helpful, because so often we feel like we have to do it right 100% of the time. And I mean, as a child therapist, a child development expert, right? Like I am not doing it that well, even close to 100% of the time. I'm like, if I get it 50%, I'm like, yes, holy smokes, I'm really rocking it. Right. So it's like, I think looking at 30%, right, of doing a good enough job is such a relief sometimes to parents of like, because I think it's hard. It would be impossible to show up 100% of the time doing 100% work, right? A+ work. It's just not possible because we're human beings too. And our kids are going to push our buttons and we have to learn how to navigate that, right? How to navigate our stuff, how to navigate their stuff, how to navigate the differences between our kids, right? When you have multiples, like that throws in different dynamics. Like in our house, it's like we have 4 kids and it's like one kid, everybody could be regulated except for one kid. And then that one kid could dysregulate everyone. And you're like, wow, oh my gosh, how did we go from being totally regulated? Like we were so good. And then this one thing happened. You got dysregulated and now everybody is dysregulated. It's like, dang it. Right. So it's like teaching all those things of like, being able to like handle that is part of what we're teaching them developmentally and normally not as toddlers. Right. So like, I think a lot of times we'll be like, parents will say to me, like, I don't want to give in to this. They're throwing a tantrum. Like, I don't want to give in to them. And I'm like, love is never giving in. Right. So if you're hugging your toddler because they're upset or they have a boo-boo and need a kiss and you're like, they're not even bleeding. It's not a big deal. But to them, it is a big deal. Right. And so we have to acknowledge their reality. And so, which is so hard, so hard because sometimes you're like, come on and move on. This is not a big deal, but it is, it really, really is to them. And so we're telling them, right? Like, I think I'm always like forward thinking. And so thinking about the teenage years, right? And we want our teenagers to talk to us because like our toddlers are going to talk to us because they're going to tell us all the things, right? But if we're not acknowledging all of their things, and I'm not saying you have to acknowledge everything all the time, you might say like, mommy's on the phone, right? Like as soon as we're done, right? Or whatever. Or you could say, I'll take 30 seconds and you tell me everything you need to tell me or whatever it is, right? Like you can do that part of parenting, how it feels right for you. But when we're acknowledging and giving them space to take up in our lives, that is so important because they're going to remember that as they're developing. And because you don't just like get a teenager who's going to talk to you if you haven't been doing the talking as you go.
Yeah. That's another thing that's cumulative, by the way. Right.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Really?
You said something so important that we haven't touched on yet, which is, you can always validate someone else's experience. And that is not the same thing as condoning it, as allowing it, as letting it pass, as accepting it. That's not the same. Validation is 100% free. You can give it to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And you can calmly and gently and kindly hold a boundary.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we get really confused about that.
Yes.
I think again, back to that, like I have to explain to my 3-year-old why they have to go to bed and they have to accept that and be calm before they can go to bed. That's not how it works. Mm-hmm. Like you're never going to explain it to them. In the same way, like, yeah, I know you don't want to go to bed. That's validation.
Yeah. What
does that cost you? Absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's bedtime. And this is actually, we teach this too. You're getting like a little mini course. And not but.
Mm-hmm.
When we say but, I'm sure you say this too, it negates the whole first part. So if I say, I know you're upset about bedtime, but it's time to go to bed. It's like the first part doesn't matter. You don't matter, but it's time, and it's time to go to bed. If we do an and, it's a both situation,
yes.
Right? And we can hold two truths.
Yes. So many things are about the two truths, right?
Yeah.
Then you're recognizing this part is true for them. And also that this part is true for you. Right. And that is like one of the most valuable parenting skills to say, and.
Yeah. It's so funny. It makes me think, do you have time for another story?
Yeah.
When my son was 3, he had spent some time with my parents and I had gone to pick him up. And I was putting him in the car. He had spent I think it was a week, putting him in the back of the car. And I said, I'm so happy to see you. Are you so excited to come home? And I happened to look at his face and it went happy, confused across his face. And I still tell this story 20 years later because it was like one of these moments where the heavens opened up and the sun shone upon me and I knew exactly what to say, which is not always the case. But I said, oh, looks like you might be having 2 feelings at once. Mm-hmm. Looks like you're happy to come home, but also a little bit sad to leave grandma and grandpa's.
Yeah.
And he went, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And when we can get to that, yeah, right? Even if kids are still upset, I'm back to your bedtime example, right? It's like, I know you are so upset. You really don't want to go to bed. Yeah. And I'm still upset about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's time for bed. Like it's so, we have to teach the both and explicitly some of the time.
Yeah. Well, and I was thinking what you just said is a tool I teach kids and parents in therapy a lot is about 2 scoop feelings, right? Of this idea that it is so often that we don't just have one feeling at a time, right? Like, when is a time that you were only happy, right? There was nothing else on your mind, just only happy.
Mm.
Not often do we just have one feeling. We often have multiple feelings, which is also what makes them confusing, because if we're both happy and sad, that is tricky, because we're like, how is there room for happy and sad? Right. And people will say to me, well, toddlers can't handle like this. And I disagree. I totally disagree, because my toddler, I mean, he has an amazing vocabulary. So he will tell me, Mommy, you make me so mad, but I still love you.
I love
Right.
it.
Yes. So I think, with enough repetition, kids understand language, they understand feelings, and they can tell you. And if you can understand what they're feeling, that doesn't mean that you agree with it. It doesn't mean you like it. It just means that they're giving you another way to understand what is happening. But I think having a meltdown, harder to manage. Having a kid say, I'm so mad at you, easier to manage. Right.
Yeah.
So that helps.
Yes. And developmentally, we should go back to the kind of the developmental side of things. Until kids are about 4, and really like extending on from there, because some kids really can't do this even when they're 12, 13, 14, right? Staying in control of one's emotions, even when one is dysregulated, right? So like not acting out what's going on inside your body all the time. And not shutting down what's going on in your body all the time. Like holding all of that emotion is hard work.
Yes.
And if kids, here's a phrase I hope no parent who's listening to this ever says again. If kids could use their words, they would use their words. Let's not tell kids to use their words. Okay. They could if they would. They would if they could. When they are so hijacked by emotion, neurobiologically, right? Because emotions have a neurobiological signature in the body.
Yeah.
They are literally in amygdala hijack. They cannot speak. It is that's like everything is scrambled. They can't listen. They can't coherently talk. The only thing they can do is behaviorally show you how upset they are.
Sure.
And that's so hard. Just think about how hard that would be if you didn't have the capacity to tell somebody how you were feeling and what you needed. Wow. And we sometimes forget that toddlers are in that position a lot.
Yes.
The other thing we forget is that we're telling toddlers what to do a lot. They don't have very much say in their lives often. We tell them when to get up, when they need a diaper, when to eat, when to do this, when to go outside. And mostly that's fine. They actually can't decide those things for themselves by and large. But when there is an opportunity for them to assert themselves, that can be an important moment.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, picking your battles, right? Like picking which things you're going to fight about. Like my toddler loves to pick out his own clothes. And as long as they are like somewhat appropriate to the season, right? Like we're not wearing shorts when it's -2, right? Like that's our boundary, right?
Yeah.
Like we have a boundary well before then, but we're wearing appropriate things, whether they match or don't match. If he likes it, who cares? Right. I'm just like, yep, that looks great. Right? You want to wear a dinosaur short for the 27th day in a row? Do it. Yes, I love this. Like, thankfully, we have a washing machine, so we can just like re-clean these and wear them again on repeat.
But it's really interesting because I'm sure you have worked with, and so have I, parents for whom that is a very challenging notion. The notion that my child would go out wearing stripes and plaid,
Yes.
at the same time, it rubs me, it rubs people the wrong way. And if we don't pause and say, I wonder why that is.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. I have a rule that a good parent makes their child look presentable in the world.
Yes.
Oh, that's really interesting. Is that a rule that's important to me?
Yes.
That came along with my, what's his name?
Right? Yeah.
Hassan Minhaj talks about luggage. What does he talk about? Oh God, baggage and inheritances that we come with, right? And so is that part of my inheritance or part of my baggage? Right? And listen, you might be living in a situation where it's incredibly important that your child wear matching clothes. And you might not, I have pictures on my wall, and they're some of the best pictures, because on picture day, kiddo wanted to do their hair that way, or kiddo wanted to wear that shirt. Super fun. But I had to get over my damn self. Right.
Yeah. Well, there's so much about, I remind parents that you couldn't control, you didn't get to pick your delivery date unless you had an induction, but I tried to have an induction. The baby didn't come on that day either. But if you have a C-section, maybe you did, but you didn't get to control that was maybe what was going to happen, right? Because of whatever is happening. And you didn't get to decide when you would conceive. You didn't get to, right? You may have been trying and it just happens on the day that it happens. We cannot control a lot about this process of growing humans, having humans, raising humans. But what we can control is our reaction to that, right? And how we respond to them. And knowing what the developmental stages are so helpful in giving grace to ourselves and to them, to say this is developmentally normal. And your mother-in-law might say, something unkind, or your neighbor or whatever. But it's you know what? If you're doing right by your kid, I think you're doing well. And your goals are to help them to be a healthy, productive, happy, contributing member to society. I think you've done it all. Literally, that is the best that you could do. And to get there, you've got to do these little micro steps that are so critical in development and about getting them to the next stage.
Yeah. I just listened to a podcast in which somebody said raising kids is like reading a book full of short stories. You start the story, and you're like, oh, this is so good. I don't know how this is going to end. And then it ends and you're like, well, hang on. The next story couldn't possibly be as good as this one. And then you get to reading that one. And every stage of childhood and of parenthood is completely different.
Yes.
And it is the case in my experience anyway, that, as soon as you've figured it out, it's time for an upgrade.
Yes. Yes. And each kid must be different in all ways. Yeah. It's like a requirement.
Yeah, it's like a requirement. And so, we can go to the parenting gym and lift those weights. It's really good for our brains. And it's really good for our personal growth and development.
No doubt. Exactly. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This has been such a great conversation and so helpful, and so many tidbits of just things to think of. As we're ending, is there anything that you really want parents to take away from this conversation?
Oh, I hope that, if nothing else, you give yourself some kindness about the incredible job that you're doing. It's really, this stuff is really hard.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Gabrielle. I enjoyed our conversation thoroughly. I hope that you all are taking things away. And I want you to stop right now and say to yourself out loud, I am a good mom or dad. I'm trying my best. And I love this kid fiercely, and we're going to get through this. I know that toddlerhood can be so challenging, but you've got this. And the more that you know, the more that you can do, and the better that you can help yourself and your toddler. With that, I will say thank you so much for your time today. Please like and subscribe to our show. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And keep the emails coming with topic suggestions for future shows to accidentalexperts@gmail.com. Have a lovely day.
Some words from our legal team.
The information presented in this podcast is not intended or implied to be a substitute for appropriate professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. All content, including text, graphics, images, and information contained on or available through this podcast, is for general information purposes only This podcast makes no representations and assumes no responsibility for the accuracy or information on or available through this podcast, and such information is subject to change without notice. You are encouraged to confirm any information obtained through this program with other sources and review all information regarding any condition or treatment with the appropriate professionals.
What we're saying is, yes, I am a real therapist, but I'm not your therapist.